In the age where sensationalized content is the only content that gets views, the idea that real estate values are in imminent danger of absolutely falling off a cliff is the only side of the coin that most people see. And while on the surface, this might seem like nothing more than harmless, albeit annoying clickbait, the reality is these videos claiming that real estate is about to crash get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views. And not only do they get views, but some viewers absolutely take this to heart when planning for their financial future. And when that is taken into consideration, these videos are not so harmless, because some of these videos have absolutely contributed to people who would have otherwise been able to buy a home to go without purchasing one, in the hopes that one day, just around the corner, real estate will crash. I am here to set the record straight, because that won't happen for the foreseeable future. So if you are relying on a crash in the hopes that then you will be able to buy a home, in this video, I'm going to explain why, unfortunately, that just won't be the case. And I'm going to explain how the Federal Reserve just put the final nail in that coffin. So without further ado, as always, my name is Derek and I got my degree in finance, so you don't have to. Let's bring this topic back down to reality. Now, the first thing that we need to look at when trying to analyze the possibility of a crash is supply. As complicated as we like to make economics, a lot of it honestly can be broken down to the fundamental concept of supply and demand. If there's more supply than demand, then prices will fall. And if there's more demand than supply, prices will rise. And when you look at the current real estate market, the current supply of total homes is extremely underbuilt. Most average estimates of undersupply of houses for the current population put it well into the millions of units. And the best, somewhat reputable example of this is Fannie Mae. They estimate that the market is underbuilt by a whopping 4.4 million homes. And if we look at the current rate of new homes being built, it's usually around 1 million per year. Last year, it was above that at 1.4 million homes, which means even if the population stopped growing and youth stopped aging, because remember, even if the population stops growing, those under the home buying age will eventually get there. And even if no old homes were scrapped or demolished, it would take 3 years at the current build rate for total aggregate housing supply to catch up with the needs of the current US population. And that's just the first nail in this coffin. And naturally now, following that up, we should look at the monthly supply of new houses in the United States. Now, what this is a ratio. It provides an indication of the size of the inventory of new homes which are for sale in relation to the number of those new homes currently for sale on a monthly basis. And basically what this shows is how long current supply would last at the current sales rate if no new homes were built. And right now we're sitting at roughly 7 months, which means in 7 months at the current sales rate, inventory would be gone. And for reference, during the last major real estate crash, the Great Recession, that number peaked in 2009 at more than double. And yes, if you're thinking to yourself, well, that number peaked after the crash, you're entirely correct. This metric alone is not enough to support the argument that there won't be a crash, but it is a good indicator as to where supply is currently in the market. And the fact of the matter is that that supply is low. Now, I also want to take a moment to say that after we go over a couple other key points and we go over that final nail in the coffin, I will go over some counter arguments supporting the idea that there will be a crash. And I'll also give you my opinions as to why those arguments, while valid, are just not strong enough to support the idea that a crash is imminent. Okay, let's continue. Now I want to go over housing for sale inventory. And this metric, I think, paints an extremely visual picture, because when you look at this metric, which by the way shows us the total available inventory of houses for sale across the country, when you look at this metric on a graph, it shows you the insanely stark contrast of where we are in the market currently and where we would need to be to even start considering the possibility of a crash. Here's the graph, and we are currently sitting at 1.3 million units available for sale across the country. Even in the early 2000s, between the turn of the century and the Great Recession, which is now considered a very hot housing market, there was more homes for sale. Significantly more, like at a minimum double. And right before the 2008 crash, there was 4 times more than what's currently available for sale. There is such an imbalance between supply and demand right now that it's not even comparable. There are so many more units of demand than there are units of supply in the current housing market. In fact, we are currently basically in the exact opposite situation that we would need to be in, supply and demand wise, to even see a reduction in prices, let alone a crash. This is just the reality of the current market. I want to talk about one more useful metric before we talk about that final nail in the coffin and counterarguments, and that is days on market. This metric basically shows us the average time it takes to sell a house. It's a good metric in regard to home buyers' appetite for homes at the current price levels. As prices start to exceed the average home buyer's appetite, days on market increases as it takes sellers longer to find a willing buyer. And currently, that number is 50. A house takes on average 50 days to sell. And when you look at the available data, that number is actually quite low. For example, in January of 2017, which is the high for the available data set, it was almost double at 88 days on average to sell. And we didn't have a real estate crash in 2017. Now, with that said, we did have a small blip later that year where home prices came down. But again, that small blip followed a data print of 88 days to sell. We're currently at 50. So a lot of these videos that scream that it's over for the real estate market are either A, just complete and utter bullshit, and the creator knows this, or B, they're based on anecdotal evidence in specific local markets, or C, a combination of both. Utter bullshit supported by anecdotal evidence from key specific areas. Okay, let's talk about the final nail in the coffin, and then let's wrap up this video by covering counterarguments. The final nail in the coffin is Jerome Powell. Well, really, it's the Federal Reserve, which he leads. The Federal Reserve is lowering their Fed funds rate this month. And according to the CME Watch tool, which tracks the probability of interest rate changes, it's not even a possibility. It's a certainty. The CME Watch tool is currently sitting at a 100% chance that the Federal Reserve will lower interest rates. And on the surface, for a lot of buyers, this is the moment they've been waiting for. Perhaps maybe even you. Finally, interest rates will come down and homes will once again be affordable. And on the other side, for a lot of potential sellers, this is also the moment they've been waiting for, because a lot of sellers want to sell their house and move, either downsize, upsize, buy a nicer house, move to a different area, etc. And they haven't been able to because they have a sub 3% mortgage from years ago and wouldn't be able to afford what they want now because of current interest rates. Well, all that will start to change this month. And while it'll be a slow and gradual change, it is finally starting. Cause for celebration, right? I don't think so, at least not for the foreseeable future. And that simply has to do with this statistic right here. For every percentage point drop, 5 million more households will be able to qualify and afford the average mortgage. 5 million potential new units of demand. Now, will all those people run out and buy a home? No, but even if a fraction start to consider it, even if only 10 or 20% start to consider it, that is a whopping 500,000 to 1 million new units of demand in a market that is already underbuilt by 4.4 million homes. And on top of that is undersupplied by about half of what is needed when it comes to houses available for sale. Now, will available homes for sale increase? Yes, it will as sellers come online. But will it counteract the increase in demand from 1, 2, or 3 percentage point drops in mortgage rates over the next couple of years? Remember, that's 5, 10, or 15 million new households that will be able to afford a home. Will the extra houses for sale counter that? I don't think so.